Okay, so trying to figure out how all of our fabulous gear and power consumption, and we have a better way to understand our power consumption, how all of that fits into emissions and what's happening in the ocean. So I have to figure this out. How do I figure this out? Why did I figure this out? What did I know? I didn't know anything about this stuff. I'm embarrassed to say. I mean, but really, I can give myself a break. Why do I need to know? Why do I need to look this stuff up? I mean, I live in America. I've had electricity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, for as long as I can remember, for as long as I've been born. Why do I need to give this a second thought? It is so reliable, and when we have a blackout or a brownout, we are up in arms. You should see us in our neighborhood. We go crazy over this. We're all up in the utilities business trying to figure out when's it coming online? Where's the repair trucks? How come they've got power, we don't, and those freaking generators only because we're mad because we don't have one. And, we are up in arms. How hard can it be to create electricity? Well, sometime around this period of time, someone came along and asked me to give a presentation on power in buildings. And since I didn't know a thing about it, I said to them, sure, when? So I had to look this up, figure this out. And among the many sources of information that I pulled together, I used Census Bureau data, and I also went to the Energy Information Agency and found a bunch of answers. Hi, Mom. And here's what I found out. We've been publishing since 1950 every single year how much energy we consume in every sector of our economy, how much electricity we produce, and using what fuels, and where does it go? This is the whole thing. So here's some of the stats right off the top of the bat. In 1950, we produced 330,000 gigawatt hours of electricity. Plus or minus 328, I think is the actual number, but just call it X for now, right? Fast forward to 2005, and in 2005, we produce 13X amount of electricity. Okay, awesome. That kept pace with our population growth, right? That's only 2X. 150 million to, we hadn't crested 300 million people by 2005. Okay, well, it's our GDP. I mean, we are very busy. We are very productive. Every time you turn on the news, productivity, productivity, productivity. We are all killing ourselves being productive here in the United States. Surely that accounts for a 13X increase in our power production. Nope, 2.8 GDP. Think about that for a moment. Okay, well, look, single-family homes. We have been increasing single-family homes like crazy since the 50s. Well, fair enough. But that only accounts for 3.2 to 4, depending on which side and how you look at the specific collections of data. But the single-family format home, numbers were sketchy in 50. They only started tightening up in the 60s, so that's where we compare it from. That's only 4X. So what's with the 13X power? I swear to God, my first thought was, the Defense Department's really busy and we really have stuff going out in Area 51. Except that when you look at where all of our energy gets used, it falls into 3 sectors. Transportation, about a third of all energy consumed. Not only 1% of electricity, but all energy consumed in the United States, a third of it's transportation. A third of it's industrial activity. Electrical, 13%. Third sector is buildings. And 87% of the electricity that's produced in the United States goes to buildings. Okay, have we had a 13X increase in all the commercial buildings? No, we have not. So, what other things could account for this? All of that electrical gear, thank you very much. And let's just take a look at the one that's causing us the heartache during peak cooling season, AC. In 1950, the U.S. Census Bureau hadn't even heard of air conditioning units. In 1955, they report 550,000 units thanks to the nascent air conditioning industry and who self-reported that number, and that was 550,000 portable coolers deployed. Not 550 households have it, not 550,000 buildings have it. 550,000 are deployed. By 2005, which is why I picked the number 2005, north of 95% of buildings in the United States has some form of air conditioning. Over 87% of those buildings have some form of central air conditioning, which means that all of the old buildings got retrofitted. And I can tell you for a fact that retrofitting your building for central AC is no insignificant chunk of change out of your construction budget. That's commitment. That is a wild idea that has taken off like crazy. So there you go. So what's the power? How do we make this electricity? Okay, we've got the statistics year after year after year. The proportion of fossil fuels to everything else since 1950. In 1950, about 80% of all our electricity is generated by fossil fuels. Fast forward to 2005, 13x power production, it's still 80% fossil fuels. Fast forward to 2015, when I give the first version of this talk, we're at about 78% because we've had some solar, some wind come along. The balance, this 22% by 2015, is a mix of geothermal, small, hydro, not bad, and nuclear. And those three, as a percentage, have been pretty steady the entire time. We've been busy doing 13x production. So now we're starting to add these other two things we call renewables, wind and solar. But 2021, when I gave another version of this talk and I refreshed the statistics, we are down to 60% fossil fuels. We've had 18% increase in wind and solar. That's fantastic, and that answers our question now, doesn't it? We're on a downward trend. We're getting rid of these fossil fuels. And since I work in long 50-year, 20 to 50-year periods before I touch the envelope of the building, which is how I'm going to squish the peak usage, then based on this trend of fossil fuels declining, I can probably continue to just sort of follow the crowd, which is to follow the building code and sort of do what they say, because we're just going to steadily, decrease how we produce electricity from fossil fuels. Okay. Except for one small detail. The Energy Information Agency forecasts that for the next 30 years, we are going to continue to use this 13x amount of power, and we are going to continue to produce that power with 60% fossil fuels. What? Okay. Why on earth would they be reporting that? So I have a speculation. I have a couple speculations, but this is my generous speculation. And I prefer this speculation because it helps you and me figure out what we can do to help with all of this. So here's this speculation. The EIA is not getting information from the three constituent groups, from the three major participants that could decrease that number. The EIA is not hearing from us consumers, customers of the electrical grid, that we're going to change our demand anytime soon. We're going to continue to ask for energy, electricity for all of our stuff. That's group number one. Group number two, they're not hearing it from the building industry, where we have significant capacity, like untapped capacity to reduce our peak demands. And I'm going to talk to you more about that in the next few episodes. Right? So, but currently, the building industry isn't telling the EIA that we're doing that. And the third major constituency, the third major participant, is the power producers themselves. And for all the noise out there about the technologies, about the controls, about possible finance that's being made, none of it is mature enough for those power producers to say, well, yeah, if we did that, yeah, we can absolutely drop that. And that's looking like pretty good technology. We're pretty sure we can take that tech on. Or, hey, yeah, a bunch of these guys have been innovating financial models that help us deal with all of the bonds that we've let out for building out our system thus far. We're going to have to pay those bonds off. We're going to have to pay those loans off one way or the other. Yeah, those financial guys, oh yeah, they're going to help us off-ramp and replace our fossil fuel production with renewable production. That's the financing is there. They're not hearing that. Or all of the noise that's being made about the way in which our grid can be reconfigured, some modifications can be made so that we can control the flow of grid better. Basically software upgrades and hardware upgrades, like bringing the grid into the 21st century of information technology and controls. All the noise that's being made about that, it's not being deployed because none of it's in a position where the money works and the production works so that the power plant guys are able to say with confidence to the EIA, yep, we're going to be able to continue this trend. Those are the three parties. You and I are the first two parties. And one way to read this chart is that we're done. We're stuck. We're going to be, in this 60% thing ad infinitum, and you and I and the power guys, we're done in the conversation of reducing emissions here in the United States. I don't buy that for a minute. I just spent the last 4 videos explaining about this big audacious project, several big audacious projects that we have undertaken in the last 125 years that have transformed all of our lives really dramatically to the point where electricity we just take it for granted. So, and that didn't happen overnight. That didn't happen by, the big flashy genius of one person. It took a good while and a lot of coordinated effort for all of us to go. I don't buy for a minute that we're stuck. So let's talk more about what it is that we can actually do.